This is Dr. Steve Chaney, and today I'd like to share with you the 3 things that every successful diet must do. Or put another way, the secret behind successfully losing the weight and keeping it off. So, we know that diets have failed us, and the problem isn't in losing the weight. The problem is in keeping that weight off. So let's look a little bit more about why diets don't work. And what I'd like to do is to introduce you to the one diet book that I actually recommend. There are so many diet books out there that just have hype and misleading information. But this one, The Weight of the Nation by John Hoffman and Dr. Judah Salerno, I actually do recommend. And that's because it was written in collaboration with the Institute of Medicine, the Center for Disease Control, and the National Institute of Health. So basically, it represents a consensus of the top weight control experts in the country. And it was produced as a series of videos in collaboration with HBO. So you can either read the book or you can watch the videos, but it really is, I think, the only diet book that I actually recommend. And they said one thing that I've been saying for years, but sometimes you have to hear it from the experts before you really believe it. And that is, first we blame fat, and low-fat diets didn't work. Then we blamed carbs, eggs, red meat, dairy, white flour, sugar, juices, sodas, high fructose corn syrup, and partially hydrogenated fats. And you've probably seen each one of these things vilified at one point or another. And you've read books or blogs or, been told that if you just eliminated 1 or 2 of those things from your diet, the pounds would melt away and you'd never be overweight again. Well, let's hear what the experts say about that. One by one, we replaced the evil food du jour and watched our collective waistlines grow. So the answer is it's not that simple. There's no one single evil food that if you omitted it from your diet, you'd be able to control your weight. So let's then look at what are the three things that every successful diet must do. And by successful, I mean it help you not only take the weight off, but to keep that weight off long term. So one is to keep metabolism high. And in that picture, what I'm saying is you want to keep those metabolic fires burning. You want to keep the metabolic rate as high as possible, because if our metabolic rate is high, it's easier to lose the weight and it's easier to keep it off. The second thing you want to do is prevent loss of muscle mass, because when we lose muscle, that's important because muscle burns off calories more rapidly than any other tissue in the body. And finally, the diet needs to teach us true lifestyle change. You've heard this from the experts for years. If you think of a diet as something you're going to do until you can go back to living the way you used to live, that weight's just going to come back on. You've got to make those true lifestyle changes if you want to keep the weight off. So that's it. 3 tips, 3 things that every successful diet must do. Keep metabolism high, prevent loss of muscle mass, and teach true lifestyle change. So let's give you a little bit of the science behind these. And I'm going to start with metabolism. I'm going to go back to The Weight of the Nation and give you another quote. And that is, our bodies were designed to store fat in times of plenty and retain fat in times of fasting. Now, I'm going to repeat that again, and I want you to remember that, because if you understand that, it will help you understand so much of the problems you've had controlling your weight in the past. So our bodies were designed to store fat in times of plenty and retain fat in times of fasting. And if you actually read the chapter, they say what they're saying is, in Paleolithic times, we might catch a saber-toothed tiger or a gazelle, and that would be a time of feasting. That would be a time of plenty. But then we might go days or weeks before we caught the next saber-toothed tiger. And during that period of time, we would be living on roots and berries, maybe a few nuts, but we would be living a basic subsistence, hardly enough calories to keep us alive. So we need to store as much energy as we can in times of feasting, in times of plenty, and to retain those energy stores as long as possible in times of fasting, because we never knew how long it might be until we came across the next saber-toothed tiger. So, that's important because our body has almost no ability to store excess energy as protein. It has a very limited ability to store excess energy as carbohydrate, but we have an almost unlimited ability to store excess energy as fat. So once you understand that, it becomes pretty obvious that our bodies are designed to store as much fat as possible in times of plenty and to retain that fat as long as possible in times of fasting. Well, that's part of the quote. Let me give you the rest of the story, or in this case, the rest of the quote. Our bodies were designed for one world, but we live in a totally new world today. So you look at the foods, those 4 pictures on the left, that represents what you're going to find in fast food restaurants in just about every corner of every city in this country, and you're going to find in just about every food court in every mall in this country. And that picture on the right says it all with respect to exercise. We're just not getting enough exercise. So let's look at that metabolism, that first one, keeping those metabolic fires burning high. Let's look at that one first. And that's because, that when we decrease our caloric intake significantly for more than a day or two, the famine response kicks in. Our body is saying, okay, we've got to hang on to those fat stores, and the first thing that it does to hang on to those fat stores is decrease the metabolic rate. Because if we turn down the metabolic fire, then we're going to burn those fat calories more slowly. That helps us retain the fat. Remember, that's what our bodies are designed to do in times of fasting. Now, there is a very simple solution to this, one that the experts have known for years, but you may not want to hear. So what the experts have told us is we want to limit our weight loss to 1 or 2 pounds of weight per week. Because if we can do that, we won't have decreased our caloric intake enough for that famine response to kick in. Our metabolic rate's going to stay high. So my advice is you want to avoid any diet promising 5 to 10 or more pounds of weight loss per week. The problem is, of course, that there's so many diets out there promising that kind of weight loss that's become the norm. That's become the expectation. And people think about, if the diet only gives me 1 or 2 pounds of weight loss per week, that's not enough. Well, this is the one time when you really should listen to the experts. Avoid those diets promising rapid weight loss. Yes, the weight's going to come off quickly, but it is going to come back on because you've decreased your metabolic rate. You've caused the famine response to kick in. Now let's look at the second one, that loss of muscle mass. So again, remember that our bodies are designed to retain fat in times of fasting, not muscle. So we lose weight from lean muscle as well as fat. And that's important because muscle burns off calories very rapidly. Let's put some numbers to that. If you lose 12 pounds of weight on just about any diet out there, you're going to lose about 5 pounds of muscle. And that's important because each pound of muscle burns 50 calories per day. A little bit of higher math tells you that, so once you've lost 5 pounds of muscle, 5 times 50, that's 250 calories per day. So when you've lost 12 pounds on a typical diet, you've lost 5 pounds of muscle, and your metabolic rate has decreased by 250 calories per day. Well, that means that once you've lost 12 pounds on a typical diet, you're going to have to consume 250 calories per day less than when you started if you want to keep losing weight at the same rate. And, it doesn't stop with 12 pounds. Let's say you've lost 24 pounds. Well, that's another 250 calories, so now you're 500 calories in the hole. And it doesn't take math whiz to figure out that once you've lost significant weight on just about any diet out there, you have lost enough muscle mass that your metabolic rate is going to be so low that it becomes almost impossible to keep losing weight. So now you finally understand the dreaded weight loss plateau. I mean, you're like most Americans, you've probably hit that many times in the past, and you haven't understood it. Because after all, you're still doing what you were doing before. You're being just as good, you're watching what you eat, you haven't cheated, and yet the weight stopped coming off. And it seems almost inexplicable until you understand the metabolism, until you understand that our body's retaining the fat, you're losing muscle, and because of that your metabolic rate's decreasing, and now your metabolic rate has just gotten so low, it's no longer possible for you to lose weight. And so what happens is you get discouraged. You fall off your diet. You start increasing your caloric intake. You start eating the way you did before. But here's the problem. Remember, in times of plenty, our bodies store fat. They don't store muscle. So we regain our weight from fat. We don't regain our weight from the muscle, and our metabolic rate remains low. So now we're going to gain more weight than we had before. Again, putting some numbers to that. If you get discouraged, let's say you've lost just 12 pounds, but you hit that plateau, you got discouraged, and now your metabolic rate is still going to be 250 calories per day less than when you started. So if you ate exactly the way you ate before you started, you're going to gain more weight than you had originally. So now you understand the dreaded yo-yo diet phenomenon. So preserving muscle mass is absolutely key to keeping your metabolic rate high. And you want to do that without dangerous herbs or stimulants, because those often cause problems, they cause side effects, and they can actually kill you. So finally, let's talk about the lifestyle change, the science behind lifestyle change. And I'm going to refer to a study published several years ago by Hill and Wing, when they looked at 3,000 people in what's called the National Weight Control Registry. These are people who have not only lost weight successfully, but they've kept it off for 10 years or more. And so they asked them, what were they doing? Well, the results for those who were successful at keeping the weight off, they all consumed low-fat diets. They had all internalized their eating patterns. They were monitoring their weight regularly, eating breakfast on a regular basis, and getting lots of exercise. So let me come back to consuming the low-fat diets. That just makes sense. There are fewer calories in a gram of there are fewer calories in a gram of carbohydrate or protein than there are in a gram of fat. So it's easier to maintain your weight if you're not eating a lot of fat. Secondly, they've internalized their eating patterns. So basically, this has become their lifestyle. This has become their new norm, and they eat this way without even thinking about it. So that's what we mean by lifestyle change. They're monitoring their weight regularly. Doesn't mean they're obsessive about it, but maybe once a week, every other week, they'll get on the scales. And if they gain a pound or two, they just make the minor adjustments because they've learned a healthy lifestyle. They've learned the adjustments that they need to make, and they've developed the confidence that they can do it. So they monitor their weight regularly. They make the adjustments when they need to. They eat breakfast on a regular basis. That's because breakfast revs your body up. It causes your metabolic rate to increase first thing in the morning. That means you burn off more calories during the course of the day. And finally, they get lots of exercise. And I think all of you understand the value of exercise as part of a healthy lifestyle. So this is this is just one study. There are literally hundreds out there that show that lifestyle change is what you need to really keep that weight off. So what if you could find a diet program that prevented the famine response, retained lean muscle mass, and therefore if you do those two things, it kept your metabolic rate high, and also taught true lifestyle change in an effective manner? There is such a program. Talk with the person who sent you this video and find out more.